There we go. Hey guys, welcome back to the Road to Here. This episode's guest is a content creator that I was introduced to through Casey, our last guest, which, by the way, you should go listen to that episode and all the episodes before. They're pretty damn good, if I do say so myself.
I would agree.
Thanks, man. This week we have with us Heretical Dan. Now, that is a mighty heavy name. I enjoy it. So tell us about yourself, man. Who are you? What do you do?
My name is Daniel. I'm a content creator on TikTok right now. See how that works out with with the band and everything that's coming down the pipeline. But
Get your clapper set up.
I do have a clapper.
Yeah, me too.
I do have one, and that one seemed not to go too much into that, but yeah, it seems like if you make videos just on the fly, I think you get more views, but your uploads don't get as much views.
Okay.
But anyway, content creator on TikTok. My main account is Lollygag Dan, and that's where I do more cosplay and entertainment, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Fun skits. But Heretical Dan is my secondary account that I use for talking about deconstructing from Christianity.
Okay. One might even say an alter ego.
Yeah.
I had no idea this other account existed. I'm excited. I do enjoy some good cosplay.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
I never could pull it off, man. I don't know. I got a kid that was real into it, and we went to a convention, and man, they were so welcoming, and the community was amazing. I had no experience with it, and she just blossomed. It was awesome. I've been a fan of that whole scene ever since, man.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the cosplay community. I was floored by it once I got introduced to it through TikTok. So
yeah,
it's like cool. It's all like a lot of these guys are movie quality looking cosplayers.
Yeah, I don't know. Eric, my friend Eric, he does. He was the first episode of this series, and he does a lot of cons because he's an artist.
Nice.
And the man built a proton pack, dude. From scratch, built it, painted it. It's ridiculous the amount of time that goes into this. It's awesome. But all right, man, on to the task at hand here. So give us a rundown of your spiritual upbringing. Who was responsible for teaching you about religion and or spirituality, and what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I was introduced to it within the womb, I would tell. Most likely. If you do studies on things that happen within the womb, I mean, there's still a learning experience at a certain point,
for sure.
Right? And you're starting to get used to voices and that sort of thing. So I'm sure when my parents were going to Sunday morning church, obviously there with them. So so it was within the womb, I say, that I was introduced. So I would say my parents were the biggest influence on me as far as my spiritual upbringing. Christianity, the branch of Christianity that is called Charismatic. Charismatic is the branch off of Pentecostal.
Okay.
So Pentecostal is a little bit more legalistic, I guess the term is. Charismatic is a little bit more lenient, but they're also a little more on the spiritual side, even more so, I would say. And from there branched the prosperity message. So you got Pentecostal, Pentecostal, Charismatic to prosperity message.
Okay, so we're talking like Osteen, that kind of stuff, right? When you get into the prosperity gospel.
Yeah, so Kenneth Copeland, he would be considered. Though he's not quite as in the spotlight as Osteen, I would say, but he's the richest, and he was definitely in the charismatic scene when it first came out. So he was a big heavy hitter with the rest of them.
So did you guys, were they strict on the dress and all that with the denim skirts and pants? And
they were more lenient.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say they're more lenient.
I went to school with these kids, man, that were some branch of Pentecostal, I'm not sure. And they when we played basketball in school, they had to wear sweatpants under their shorts. That's how they could, no leg ever.
Wow. No, we weren't that strict. And my parents, I'd say, were strict, but not too strict. So we could watch like movies and certain music on the radio.
Right.
But mainly though would be more Christian music was being pushed, and then if there was a Christian movie or something like that, then we'd be watching that.
Now, see, I have found, and I've been a musician as long as I can remember, and I have found that a lot of times Christian music seems to just rip off popular music. It'll be the same sound and the same vibe, just with Jesus lyrics. Like, is that a fair assessment? I don't know. I mean, you probably listened to more of it than I did.
Yeah, I would say so. Where you have they have the Christian music industry. That's a whole other subject. But I would definitely say that it's trying to make money. It's trying to find bands that sound like the non-Christian bands. So quite often you'll see a list of Christian bands, and they'll have like little side notes. This band sounds like Metallica, or or something like that.
So it totally is a recruitment tool.
Yeah.
And then
yeah. So going back to it, my upbringing was a charismatic church Bible school called Rhema, and Kenneth Hagin was the head of that.
Okay.
And so a lot of people consider him the modern day father of faith.
Okay.
Guru.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with him at all.
So
Hagin?
If you hear anything about like God's healing, a structure of how to get your healing through faith, and positive confession, believing in your heart, those kind of things. Even tithing would be giving money. That's part of it too. Steps of faith, where you're saying it, you're believing it, and then you're kind of walking it out. So like if you're sick, you're gonna get up and do the dishes and say I'm healed, and start doing things that you normally would be kind of resting, but you go and act like you're not sick, and then you would kind of receive your healing that way by doing steps of it.
That tracks, man. I think that's some stuff like that is in a lot of different beliefs of a lot of different faiths. You know what I mean? Just positive mindset, manifestation, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it's plagiarized. So I believe Kenneth Hagin plagiarized this other preacher that took that belief system as well. So it's all, as you said, even with the music industry, where they kind of take styles. Well, it's the same thing with taking belief systems. So not just believing in healing, but getting material things was kind of the same kind of a deal. Like you act like you're a rich person, you're going to dress like a rich person. So and there's nothing wrong with that. So there's nothing wrong with some of those things within a balance, and not going too extreme, because they went on the extreme side with some of the healing. So that they would go and say, you need to get rid of your medication from the doctor. That would be a step of faith. Stop believing what the doctor says, believe what God's word says. And so people would get, there'd be some people that get really hurt, or even death would occur. And not just with like adults. I mean, we're talking about kids, babies, people that are pregnant, doing that steps of faith, and then somebody or a child dying in the process of that. And then they would backtrack and say, "Oh, we never said that. We never did that. We told you to stop taking your medication after you got healed." Because why would you need medication when you're healed? So it was just like a lot of that stuff. But one of the other things was praying in tongues. That was a big one.
That fascinates me. That absolutely fascinates me. I went to a Pentecostal church one time when I was a kid. And for an outsider, dude, that is a whole nother adventure right there. I was not prepared.
Sure.
Speaking in tongues, man.
I was raised in it.
Yeah. What's the background? What is, I mean, I'm assuming it has to do with the Holy Spirit coming in and moving you to.
So there's selfish reasons why they use praying in tongues. The original purpose for of speaking in tongues was to, in Acts, the book of Acts, or at the beginning, they all spoke in tongues, and then they went out and they started preaching the gospel essentially to people
Mhm.
who they didn't have that language, and then yet they were talking to that language to people on the streets to witness and bring
Okay.
people to Jesus or something like
Right.
that. Well, um, for the charismatics today, they would more use that for selfish reasons, like Jesus often said, "Oh, when you pray, pray in your closet." But then you have this mass of Christians just praying in tongues,
Right.
not like speaking in tongues, talking to a person with to try to witness to them when they don't have that language. It's to get this filling from the Holy Spirit. So what this kind of looks like is can get into like holy laughter, people falling over, rolling on the floor. And when you look at them, you're like, oh, is this fake? Well, I can't speak for everybody. I could speak for me. It wasn't fake for me.
What did it
Uh,
feel like? I mean, if you want to talk about it, you don't have to, but
yeah,
that's
no, I'm
it's
open.
totally foreign to me. What did you experience when this happened?
So it would be this like, this feeling of great joy, almost like sometimes it could feel like the feeling that you would get on a boat where the waves are
Mhm.
moving you up and down. It could feel extreme, and so sometimes it just felt like this power, and it's hard to explain. Sometimes it felt like a deep respect for God, which would feel like you would for if you're in a dangerous situation, not maybe potentially a dangerous situation
Mhm.
where if you were to have if you're working on so if anybody's worked in like a factory before, those machines you have a lot of respect for. Like if
Mhm.
you're working with power tools, you have a lot of respect for your power tool
Mhm.
because you know the damage it could do to you. And
Right.
so sometimes that same level of respect was there for God because you knew on what he could do to you if if he essentially wanted to.
So that sounds like fear. Is it respect or is it fear?
It would be more on the fear base. But yeah,
Yeah.
in the charismatic Christian scene, they would call that respect.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know I did when I was in school, I mentioned before, I went to Liberty for a little while,
Mm,
the Falwell joint, and I went online, and we talked about the term God fearing because you hear that a
mm,
lot. I grew up in the South. I'm currently still in Tennessee. So it's God fearing Christians,
mm,
or that's a term you hear often. And the Hebrew, if I'm not mistaken, for that term was Selah, Selah. I know I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but
mm.
then that was basically reverence and respect. So I feel like
Yeah.
that. I don't know. I've never heard it explained like that. So that's because I do get that because I do work around machinery, and
Mm,
you do have to, I think, it'll fuck you up
yeah.
if you're not
Yeah.
careful.
Right. So, I mean, there could be some people would have a lot of like so much joy they'd be crying, and I think that's more of a I think that's more of a repentance type of thing, where people that know some of the
Mhm,
things that they've done and then they feel forgiven
mhm,
when they probably shouldn't be, those kind of things. There would be so when you're looking at all this, right? You're from the outside looking in. When you see this, it looks pretty insane, and yeah, rightfully so. Um, but after I left Charismatic, um, I started doing research, and I found out that the Christians actually took the practice from Hindus,
mhm,
and it's called Kundalini, and so it would be more of a extreme version of Kundalini, in my opinion.
mhm.
But when you put them side by side, they're fairly accurate in what they look like.
Yeah.
So, so when it comes to all this stuff, like the church taking things and everything, the problem that I always have is that they claim it as their own. There's a manipulation and lying tactic to it, where we're taking the style or we're taking this similar band and we're making this Christian band as if they're the original and they're getting
Right.
all the credit. And they wouldn't even give credit to the original band. They'd say, "Oh, this our band sounds like this band," but they
Mhm.
wouldn't give credit to that band.
Kinda like Greta Van Fleet, just not yeah. Uh, I have a problem with that band, sorry. I don't know if you're
Ah,
familiar. They sound exactly like Led Zeppelin, they're just
yeah,
unrepentant
yeah,
about
yeah.
it. But, you talk about Kundalini, and I have recently been on a Hindu kick, and I've been reading a lot, and Kundalini was part of Raja Yoga, if I'm not mistaken, or it's the kingly yoga. It
Mhm,
was not the normal. And but I've noticed the more I look into this stuff, man, it all just borrows from each other. Like
mhm.
it's all just
Yeah.
I don't know. I think where it gets gross with a lot of Christian stuff that in my opinion, is that when it becomes profitable, when it
Mhm.
becomes all about making the money.
Yeah.
And that's so at
Well, it's not just that, it's the deceiving,
Mhm.
you're saying that this thing is from God, and that he originated it, and
Mhm.
that's not true. He did not originate. God didn't even, there was praying, speaking in tongues before the acts, from my
Mhm.
knowledge. I don't know where that came from. I heard it from one of my pastors. He actually
Mhm.
taught it. He actually came out right. And that's to his credit. He actually said that other religions have used praying in tongues before. But the problem is, majority of the pastors out there would not say that. That
Why do you think that is?
the it, t- I, For some people, would look at that and they would take away the credibility. I think
Mm.
the
Yeah.
authenticity, the originality of it. Like God is the creator, and why would he be borrowing from other religions when he's trying to establish his own,
Right.
in Christianity?
Why do you think why do you think we as a people, or we as a religious people or whatever, have to be right? Because I mean, when you zoom out, it's all geographic. B, we are what we are because of where we are.
Mhm.
Um, B, it is it's so similar, and it's all kind of saying the same thing. Like
Yeah.
why do we feel the need to we have to be right and everybody else has to be wrong? Or is that something
In
that is
Christianity.
Christian? Yeah, is that just a
Okay.
Christian thing, or do you
Yeah.
feel like that's outside of
I can only speak for Christianity. So with Christianity, it's well, I mean, I can speak for myself. Now that I'm not a Christian, it's okay to be wrong.
right?
I'm fine with that.
Mhm.
And even while I was a Christian, there was a point where I would say that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to mess up,
Mhm.
and But for Christianity, the goal is to be like Christ.
Mhm.
I say this quite often in my videos. Is that you are taking away your old self when you become a new creature, and you're taking on the identity of Christ more and more. You're pushing aside your old ways and taking on this new life, and this new life is in Christ, not in yourself, not in your old ways or the ways that you want. You're taking on the identity of Christ. And so, who is Christ? Christ is perfect. And even if there's scriptures, I think it's First Corinthians, where it talks about how the church is the body of Christ, right? And
Mhm.
so if we are the body of Christ, Christianity that is, then we need to be perfect. We need to be that perfect body.
Right.
Um, and so how do we become that perfect body? Well, we do that by setting aside our wants and our desires and who we are, to put on that identity of perfection in Christ. And so since that is the goal, to be wrong would be to be flawed, and now you're no longer that perfect body of Christ that you
Mhm.
need to be. And so it has to come down to where it's like, oh, it's blatant in your face, I need to repent. Okay, we're back into perfection again. So
Right.
that's the way I view it. And that's why you see so many people where they just they're in church and they just seem fake and not
Mhm.
real,
Yeah.
uh,
I've
because
noticed.
yeah, and I was one of them. I was one of them, because you're trying to put on this fake persona that you got it all together, and Christ is in you, and If not, then you're going to get talked to by pastors or spiritual leaders, and you get
Right.
in trouble. So you try to put on the fake face as much as possible. And even with charismatic, because you're taking those steps of faith and not really addressing problems within you, or like sicknesses and that sort of thing, but also clear your character flaws and all that other stuff. You're denying that you have depression, denying
Mm.
mental health issues. It's not just the physical health part, it's the mental health part as well. And so that denying of yourself more and more, it eventually just hurts people. And so that's
Yeah.
why you see people act fake and not real.
Mm. Man, I can't, like, I don't know. I can't wrap my head around, like, mental health is so important to me and something that I've struggled
Yeah,
with for a long time.
me too.
I had issues just with the societal pressure, and there wasn't any religious pressure, and that's, I don't know.
Mm.
I'm sorry that that happened to you. Number
Yeah, thank
one.
you. There's a lot of people dealing with it.
Yeah.
I have ADHD, inattentive ADHD with major depression and anxiety. I have some PTSD too, but
Mhm.
while I was a Christian, man, uh, no, it was difficult, and
Yeah.
for many different reasons. One, I'm focusing, because I'm hyper focused. I'm focusing my attention on what's important. My spiritual life is the most important thing. So
Right.
school life is not that important. Nor do I really like school, so that's being pushed aside
Right.
constantly. I'm just doing the bare minimal. Not feeling very encouraged to do my schoolwork as well. More
Right.
interested in just becoming a preacher, or something like that, a spiritual
Were you a
leader.
preacher? Like, did that ever
No, that
happen?
never happened. I got
Okay.
towards the end of my Christianity, I got some people asking me, but if I wanted to be a preacher, I'm like, nah, I don't think so.
So, were you exposed to other religions outside of Christianity growing up, or was that it? Was that the only
No, not really. Catholicism was almost like a separate religion at times, even though that they're linked.
Right.
My grandparents were Catholic, so I went to a Catholic church for about a year,
Okay.
um, just because I wanted to take communion.
Right.
Just because,
Yeah.
like, it was like, I couldn't take it. Why can't I take it? Well, I'm going to try it. I'm going to
Yeah.
try to get this thing. And then
I
I sat in the pew for about a year. And I'm like, hey, when do I get to go up and do that? And then they're like, my grandma's like, oh, you got to go through like
yeah, it takes
classes and all that
it
stuff.
takes a
I'm
while.
like,
Yeah.
I'm done. I
Yeah.
already, I already waited a year.
Yeah, man. I went with my grandparents when I was little. My mom's side, my grandmother was German, and she was pretty devout. But it's a
Mhm.
whole, I love the structure, and I will say, like, from just a ceremonial standpoint, Catholicism is beautiful. Like,
Mm.
the architecture and
Yeah. Yeah.
all the, you know what I mean? Like, the whole thing is just, yeah, I mean, the atmosphere is top notch. Now,
Mhm.
you get past that, it gets a little hairy.
Right. Yeah.
So
The way it's ran by the leaders is
right, yeah, but I mean,
disgusting.
you throw in the, and we fuck everything up, man, people.
Mhm.
Like, I think all the problems with spirituality and all the problems really on earth are because of us.
Yeah.
We'll take we'll take anything beautiful and completely destroy it, no problem.
Yeah.
So give me one give me one good thing and one negative thing that you took from your time with the church.
Well, I've talked about some of the negatives already, but
Yeah.
um, I so the one thing I could take that is good. I really enjoy community.
Mhm.
I enjoy like that, gathering together, being a part of something,
Mhm.
and I often thought like it would be nice to just have something like this, only positive speaker
Mhm.
in a place, that
Right.
we can, kind of get something on what to work towards, through the week.
Mhm.
That's not so spiritual,
You should
but
start it, man. You
yeah,
should,
right.
maybe with the church
And
or the positive affirmation. I don't know. You could
yeah.
think of something cool. Like,
Right.
so what age What age were you when you kind of started to put the brakes on? At what point did the cracks start showing for you in Christianity or in your flavor of Christianity?
So, man, I had already started about the age of 25, starting to deconstruct, at least the charismatic part of my Christianity.
Mhm.
And I I was going to other Bible studies with young adults and that sort of thing, and starting to see some of the flaws within Scripture that the that my pastor would preach on, and
Mhm.
other charismatic preachers would be preaching on, and seeing how they're wrong through the Scriptures. And then um, I remember I was in one of those Holy Ghost meetings, right? And I had been in so many of them, special meetings, and the build up towards it was just like all the other ones, where we're going to experience God like we've never experienced God before, and it's going to be
Right.
incredible, amazing, and it's gonna be life altering. And just sitting there, and something kind of clicked, and I was 27, 28 at the time, and I was just like, we're gonna do these meetings, and they keep saying the exact same thing over and over again, and all the other meetings, and we never change. We never go on to this more heightened spiritual level than we were before. And I've been wanting that, and
Mhm. Yeah.
where's it at? So I and I was a praise and worship leader at this church
Okay.
for me. So I was orchestrating the worship, so I got back into it, and I got, spiritually high, and just like the rest. And in the middle of that, though, something clicked, and I said, I thought it was God,
Right.
but I believe it's my own intuition,
Same
skeptical
thing.
skeptical thinking jumping in. And I looked at everybody, and I said to myself, what a bunch of spiritual gluttons that just take this filling from the Holy Spirit and do absolutely nothing with it. And that kind of just solidified it for me,
What
that
do you mean?
what
Expand on that a little bit.
so the filling of the Holy Spirit is always meant for growing spiritually, and to become more bold, and like outgoing with preaching to others, and that sort of thing. So would I look at everybody sitting there, and they're laughing, they're getting filled with the Holy Spirit, and yes, they're getting filled, but they're doing it just for selfish reasons. They just want to get high, you
Gotcha.
know. And if you just want to get high, that's fine. There's nothing wrong, like,
Right.
if you can get high naturally and all that stuff, if that's the goal, cool, man, that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. But put don't put some covering over what it actually is. If it is that we're just going to spend time with God and get filled and feel his love,
I think
that's
that's
fine.
I think that pressure is just an evangelical thing. I mean, I feel like that's one thing that Catholics got right. Like, you come to us, you know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? Like, you come here and we're going to teach you how to feel these things. It's not as predicated on helping everybody. And and
Sure.
that translates into different religions too. I know
Mhm.
in my study of Buddhism, your Mahayana Buddhists are more of you keep coming back. The circle continues until everyone's been enlightened, right? So it's
Mm.
not the same thing, but
Sure.
and the Theravada are more intrinsic, and it's so that concept is not exclusive to Christianity, but it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it until just now, as I'm kind of talking it out. Sorry, but
No worries.
the pressure, man, like the from the evangelical standpoint, because not only are you supposed to get this and understand, which in my experience is very hard to do, or can be.
Well, just make sure evangelical is not charismatic. Just
Okay.
so this is
Well,
a charismatic church. Evangelicals don't really do the Holy Spirit,
no,
praying
no,
in
no.
tongues, all that stuff.
But about as far as I guess I'm using the term loosely. As far as bringing everybody and speaking to everybody about
Sure.
God, and
Mhm.
I feel like that's a lot of pressure that you
Yeah.
see in a lot of Protestant faiths, and I don't know. That's
Yeah.
it's pretty unfair because I mean they're
Sure.
pretty complex subjects here, you know, and that you go and
Mhm.
hear about once a week, and you're expected to tell everybody, and
Right.
no wonder it's all fucked up. Because
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
uh,
when you have this thing that's like this is the goal to become more spiritually strong, and
right.
then we're never going to be the same, and it's just when that is the goal, that's the thing that's misleading about it. And if the goal is we're just going to spend time with God and let him love on us, and we're going to love on him, in that spiritual way, I probably wouldn't have had much of a problem with it. But because it wasn't that way, and it was I didn't want to be lying to myself anymore or anything like that,
Right.
or have somebody lie to me, you know.
So how is your relationship with the church now? Like, or just faith in general? Where are you at spiritually? Would you consider yourself an atheist now, or?
So the majority of the church, I can't speak for the world, but for America, I hate,
Mhm.
honestly. Now, individuals, I don't mind. I don't mind I can sit down with an individual Christian and have a conversation, and I prefer that. But man, when they are a part of the collective, it's very difficult to have a conversation. And even when sometimes even when you're sitting down with the individual, you're not always speaking to the individual. You're still speaking to the collective of the church and
Mhm.
what's been instilled in them.
For
Um,
sure.
so I have hopes for the church that it does better, but my hopes for the church to do better, many Christians today would say, "Oh, that's satanic."
Hmm.
To be inclusive or whatever. So, um, spiritually, I'm not very spiritual, and I'll tell you why. And I don't have problems with people that are spiritual in their personal walk in life and stuff. Um, when I was a Christian, everything was extremely spiritual.
Mhm.
So I've talked about this in some of my videos. So I'm going to have a couple of subjects here. So we'll talk about uh, living life with two dimensions and having to be responsible for that, and then also uh, spiritual anxiety,
Mhm.
and they're both kind of related.
Right.
So in this Christian, belief system that was instilled in me and many others, says that there are two realities. One is a spiritual reality that is very real, and some would even say more real than this reality. And
Mhm.
obviously, we have this reality that we can see, hear, and touch, and we have this consciousness about it. And but we have this responsibility of this spiritual realm that we can't see. And in it are these spiritual beings. Some are good and some are evil. And we have this head spiritual guy that's called God the Father and Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And they're all connected as one person, but yet they're three different people. And you have to please all three of them. You have to live your life according to rules to please them, and then there are certain situations where you need to be seeking God and somehow know his mind and what he wants in the situation,
Mhm.
and try to orchestrate that so you can continue to please this person you can't hear audibly, you can't see with your eyes. And then there are, if you don't please him the right way, you could be out of his blessing and out of his protection. And then
That's
you have to
terrifying.
deal with demons, and that could essentially attack you. You could essentially see them in your spiritual eyes. you know um they're you could get into an accident, just natural things that actually happen in real everyday life, and it just
Mhm.
kind of happens, and then people say, oh, see, you're in sin, or you don't have the protection of God, or you're doing something wrong. So you're trying to live your life, and you're trying to manage a different dimension, realm, reality that you don't really have any proof that exists. You have to try to make sure that everything that you're doing is just right, in order to maintain balance. And that balance is mostly supposed to be goodness and blessings and protections and that sort of thing. So in that you have to pray, you have to praise and worship, read your Bible, be trying to witness to people when you get the chance, give money into the offering, being loving and kind to people that are not so loving and kind to you, be a doormat, in fact, to those people. You have to be obeying your parents and respecting your parents, and there's just all this stuff that's involved. And in that creates a lot of anxiety. So we'll talk about spiritual anxiety. And, trying to be able to manage this whole thing creates so much anxiety. And I said, my schoolwork was thrown off to the side because I'm focusing my attention on the spiritual realm and trying to make sure that I'm pleasing God and that sort of thing. And I'm being his buddy and he's being my buddy. And I did have a genuine love for God. Don't get me wrong. When I'm kind of coming at it, when I talk about some of
Right.
this stuff, I'm coming from a more skeptical thinking way. But when I was in it, I was in it. Like I loved God. He was my friend and I was his friend. And I would talk to him like a regular person. And I thought he would talk to me, but I was just me and my, spirit or my mind, and that sort of thing. And, and some things went really well when I spent time in prayers because I was thinking about the situations. I was processing those situations and trying to find God, but I was really trying to find the best outcome for those situations. And, so it wasn't all bad. It did help me produce certain things within me that I still use today, but I just don't label it as God anymore.
Do you meditate now, like
I do.
outside of the church? Yeah.
Yeah. I meditate, breathing exercises.
Same. Yeah.
It's not a spiritual thing for me. I look at it more of a mental thing,
Right.
Mental healing and, mental processing and that sort of thing.
See, it's hard for me in my journey now to draw the line between the two. Like they have kind of, I don't know how to explain it without sounding weird, but the whole spiritual and self is just kind of meshed, and it's been interesting. But so let's move to your content.
Okay.
Because I've watched a lot of your videos, because these are my favorite interviews that I do, because I don't know you. You know what I mean? When I do my friends, like it's more like I know where they're coming from. But I had to kind of research. So I'm watching these videos, and
I appreciate that.
yeah, man. So you seem to specialize in satire, which is something that I enjoy, because I'm one snarky SOB. All right, when it comes to a lot of things.
Yeah.
So how do you feel the satire helps you process all your experiences, the good and the bad? Like, why satire? Why did you choose that?
So comedy, I've always viewed as a great healing force. That was one of the steps of my healing or deconstructing from Christianity. I remember going through this one situation. I'm not going to go into detail just because it'd be too long. It was basically a breakup. That it wasn't the breakup that really bothered me. It was that my life was not going anywhere. It was just stagnant at the age of 26, and feeling like I couldn't do anything. And I was very angry, and I was angry for 6 months, and depressed and angry. And I'd never experienced that before. Never had ever experienced that type of feeling before. And I was not in a place where I could seek mental health mental health professionals. I just didn't know how to do it. I just had, that world was foreign to me because of Christianity. And I, I decided, what, because I did enough praying, praise, worship, seeking God, nothing was happening, no changes. And so I was like, what, I'm just going to watch comedy, and I'm going to listen to stand-up comedy, and then I'm going to listen to comedy music, Weird Al Yankovic and that sort of thing. Yeah. And that's all I did for about 2 to 3 months. And it finally started to break little by little. you know,
doing 2 or 3 months of Weird Al, man, shit gets
yeah.
strange. I bet. Yeah, that's awesome.
It helped, you know, it
Yeah, I love Weird Al, man.
yeah, it helped. And you know, I I so I view satire as a way to kind of laugh at some of the things that we've gone through. It's, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, other people are going to find it offensive, but what in this world am I going to say that's not going to be offending
Right.
somebody? You know, so it's um I choose to do the satire because one, I know that it's not just helping me, but it's kind of helping others when they see some of the stuff that I've been through, and then I'm able to kind of laugh and poke fun at
Mhm.
it, and you know, you know, it helps me, and I think it really helps others.
So I wanna get your this is just a selfish question more than anything. I always viewed comedy as kind of a defense mechanism.
Mm,
Whenever I didn't wanna push through shit and I didn't wanna think about stuff, I would make jokes, or if I didn't know what to do, I
mhm,
always resorted to comedy, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was
mhm,
always just gallows humor or, and I always found myself wanting to be, and part of this is just me being a ham or whatever you wanna call it, in a theater,
mm,
but I always wanted to say the most outlandish shit possible, right? Regardless of how offensive it was, and I've really toned that down.
mhm.
Thank goodness, because man, you look like a real dick sometimes when just yeah, when you're trying. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I hear you.
Do you see it that way? I mean, did comedy help you kind of avoid stuff or help you work into stuff slowly? Because that's what it did for me. And I don't know if I'm alone there. I'm like I said, selfish question. I'm just curious.
So, uh, I know I've probably been in those. I have been in those situations where I use comedy as a way to not address issues. But the type of comedy that I'm doing on my page, I think, is more addressing issues,
Mhm.
and but doing it in a way, because some of those issues are hard. You know, some of the issues that people go through are way worse than mine. Like, I didn't go through some of the things that other people. Not to try to total silver line my experience, but you know, some of those topics are very difficult to hit, and so sometimes having a comedic joke or a skit to kind of address it a little bit helps break that tension a little bit,
Yeah.
to where somebody can kind of look at it. You know, there is that type of comedy that's kind of put offish. I don't want to address this, so I'm going to make a joke to laugh it off.
Mhm.
But there's also the side of comedy that addresses those issues. So, but it does in a comical way so that people don't get so um,
Overwhelmed.
overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
that
Okay.
it breaks that tension.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't feel as crazy now, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this next question, and I went back and forth on asking you this because, like I said, I don't want to come off as a dick, and
Yeah.
I've tried to tone down my bluntness.
That's
But
fine.
this phenomenon that I have observed with your content and your comedy is not exclusive to you.
Mhm.
I have noticed, and I've been really into this shit for a couple of years. Okay, so I've been, and I see things through a totally different lens because I don't have the religious upbringing.
Sure.
Um, I see it in your content. I see it in the guys from the original Sinfluencer, which I'm trying to. We're working on getting them on the show.
Oh, cool.
I see the people that have devoted their life to this stuff. There's a lot of anger underneath the surface and rightfully so. There's a
Mhm.
lot of anger underneath the surface in their content and the stories that they tell and the messages that they give on social media. And so I just want to know, do you consider yourself an angry person? Are you angry at your parents, your upbringing, the church, whatever? Like, do you see yourself that way?
So I don't see myself. I would say I see myself as an angry person in part. There's a lot of things that make me angry. Anger is just a human emotion,
For sure.
and I think that there's proper anger for the right time, right place. And I think anger is just one of the ways that we process. Should, you know, in Christianity, they would tell you quite often, don't be angry. Like, there's only very rarely a time for you to be angry, I would say. And most of the time they would say that, oh, that's when you see somebody leading somebody to hell. That's when you should use your anger. because it's a righteous anger. But other than that, having anger is just not proper. So being in a place where I can allow myself to be angry is very therapeutic in quite a ways. So I think there's a stigma that the church has made about anger, that is this bad, horrible thing, and it's really not. It just needs to be used properly. And so why would I be angry during some of the videos that I make, and passionate about it and everything? Well, I lived it, and though it's one of those things where I use what has happened to me and try to use it for the good and to be stronger. There's also this part of me that's like, man, that sucks that I had to go through that. It sucks that I don't have my community anymore. Like I still mourn that, as much as I might ridicule it and talk about some of the issues that were within it and how that was unhealthy and toxic. There's still this part of me that's like, that was still family. I considered them family. I hung out with them more than my family. So I mourn that loss. And so sometimes in mourning, anger comes. I'm angry of some of the years that are wasted from my life because I spent it in belief systems and ways of doing things that were just not the way you should do things. And, I spent a lifetime focusing on a secondary spiritual realm that really I had no reason to believe that I was there. And that exhausted a lot of my mental focus and energy and emotions on
especially
this.
being ADHD, man. Like there's only so much room in there. I get it. Like,
Oh
yeah.
man, it was, and then being told that this spiritual realm is more important than my natural realm. Well, that hurt me in the long run. It took a long time and a lot of like work to get myself to advance in work ethics and mindsets, and getting shit done. Before I was having the mindset, oh, God's going to do it all for me.
Right.
That's what the preacher said. He said all I have to do is have faith, and so that's all I got to do. Great. And
That does sound a lot easier than actually doing shit.
Yeah, then prayers are not being answered and that sort of thing. Well, what am I doing wrong? Okay, I need to focus more on my faith, I guess. I
Yeah.
need to focus more on the spiritual realm.
It's such it's such a there's just not a lot of detail for them to expect you to base everything on it, because there's nothing that covers everything about it. You know what I'm saying? Like in the actual scriptures. How much have you read through the Apocrypha at all?
Some of it. I definitely went through the book of Tobin. I like that book a lot.
Thomas is good too. I really enjoyed the Gospel of Thomas.
I've gone through Thomas a bit. Yeah.
And Enoch's like an acid trip. Like that's
yeah.
You think Revelation's weird. Enoch's a whole nother level of weird, man.
Yeah, it's that Enoch's crazy.
Well, that's good, man. Like I'm glad, because I wonder, and I've never really had the chance to ask someone who's in your position. I talked to Eric, my buddy, on the first episode a little bit about it, and Eric's not a very angry dude, just in general. Like he's pretty chill. So I worry about people, because I could see how it could be, all consuming. And I realize the content is just one small outlet, and it does not represent the entirety of the person. But I was just curious.
Yeah. So, that's another thing. The stuff that I post are what I think of within that moment. Majority of my day, I'm not really thinking about it.
Right.
I'm still living my life, and it's like, oh, this just came to my mind. Let's talk about it. Yeah. And I talk about it. I post it and get it off my chest. And other people kind of comment like, "Oh yeah, I've been through that too," or have you considered this thing? Kind of added on to the conversation.
Well, so it's community, man.
Yeah, I really enjoy the people on TikTok and everything. So it's been really great. I was gonna say though, because you were asking about the deconstructing of my faith, because I didn't quite finish that. If I can finish that up,
for sure.
So I'll try to give you the brief overview. So I deconstruct from Charismatic. That was a rough situation because that's essentially my Christian family.
Right.
I get married during that time. They blame my wife because it just so happens to be the exact same time that I'm, really kind of
Right.
deconstructing from it.
Jezebel.
Yeah. and I remember telling, I think it was, I forget who it was. I think it was my younger brother. And I was like, because they were upset at me. They were really upset. And I go, you know what, man? Um, it's crazy that people will go off and get addicted and start living sinful, like what you consider sinful, and get addicted and just ruin their life, right? And those people sometimes get shunned and all that. I just left the church. That's all I
Right.
did. I just left the church and that belief system.
Yeah.
At the time I was still a Christian. I'm still a Christian. Like, why are you coming after me, man?
Right. Well, it's
And
just
so it kind of opened his eyes to back off a bit. And we're great. We're good. We're totally good now. But then going from that, being a evangelical for about 7 years, and during
Mhm,
that time, me and my wife were adopting. We adopted through the foster care system,
mhm.
and
Thank you for that.
yeah, thank you. And it's just we're trying to do the best we can, and we're noticing that it's hard because we have kids that have emotional needs that the church is not really able to address, and
Mhm.
some physical needs that the church can't address as well. So we're not going to church quite as much, but we're still plugged in. I'm still working at a ministry,
Okay.
at a homeless shelter, and I was doing that for quite a while. And so it's going to get kind of a heavier part right
And that's what
now.
we're here for, man. I enjoy that.
So we adopt a little girl with physical needs.
Mhm,
She has a trach and a G tube and leg braces, just a lot of stuff.
mhm,
And anybody knows about trach, care. It's pretty extensive. It's
mhm,
it's it's scary
mhm.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Because essentially, that the thing that's in their neck, you got to take that out and you got to put a new one in, and
Mhm,
it's got to get clean. Got to clean that site all the time.
mhm,
Got to make sure no fluids go down that site.
mhm.
Otherwise that goes straight into the lungs. So it's like a lot.
Yeah.
Um, there's a If I can go a little bit more to detail if you want me to.
Yeah, go ahead,
There's
man.
a vacuum, the little
Mhm.
tiny vacuum that goes into the trach area, and you can suction up any goobers or whatever you want to
Yeah,
call them. Yeah,
yeah.
and there's just a lot, and you can't go in too far, otherwise you're hitting
Important stuff? Yeah.
important stuff. So, um, but that was very very difficult. But what was great was that she was starting to get better, little by little, and I we got to put a cap on her trach side. Now, when a kid has a trach and it's always open, you don't hear their voice. It
Mhm,
bypasses the vocal cords,
mhm.
and so we did not hear her cry ever or speak or anything like that. Well, when she got capped, which you can take on and off the cap, um, we heard her speak the
Right.
first time, but she cried for the first time, and so it felt like it almost felt like birth in a way,
Wow.
like a child being born
Yeah.
in a way. And hearing your child's voice for the first time is just, it's no words can describe. Like, think about if you can think about your kid not having a voice for the first, I don't know, I think probably four months when she came into our care, and then hearing it was just like me and my wife were both tearing up. Just
Yeah.
so wonderful. And she grew up and she was just a ham. She was so
Right.
funny. Like, she was just hilarious. She would mock me, if I was sick. So I'd be coughing in the background and she'd go, and just funny stuff. She um she never saw Family Guy, but this is kind of a famous Family Guys where she'd go, "Dad, Dad, 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 Dad," and just kind of like, "What?" And then she'd go, "Hi." when everybody's asleep, So, you know what? I just realized you got Star Trek. I got a Star Wars.
Oh, nice. Nice. Well, I had the superior science fiction show, but it's okay. Nobody's
I like them
perfect.
both.
Yeah.
I like them both. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
So, she's getting better and better. She's going to school at 3 years old,
That's
and they have a
awesome, dude.
um, they have a special system in the school system that she was in, so she could go to school. Well, in January of 2017, she got sick, and it didn't look bad. I mean, before we've had her sick before, and like you always knew when she was sick, when she was like
Right.
rough, and
Mhm.
it was like one of those things where oh, she doesn't look too bad. Do we send her to school? Do we not send her to school? She seems happy, but then there's times where she's tired,
Right.
and we're like, so there was kind of this back and forth for a couple of weeks, and then one night I came home. I went to her doorway to chat, kind of listen to her and stuff like that, and I didn't hear any coughing, so I was like, okay, she's okay. I went to bed, woke up the next morning, and found her, and she passed away in her sleep. And so we found out about a year later that she had probably like walking pneumonia.
Mm.
Her heart enlarged, and she had strep throat with rhinovirus. And so, like, just all those like three things, three major things hitting her at once, which I think the enlarged heart was the pneumonia.
Right.
It was just, with her being a trach kid and all that stuff, it was a bad combination of sickness
Yeah.
that just hit her. And I'm still a Christian at this point, working in the ministry, and I'm devastated. Our family is devastated, and it was hard because we were at that point where we were done with adopting,
Right.
and we had 5 kids in our family, and it just felt complete, you know.
Mhm.
And then now it's like, oh man, now this thing happens, and there's just so much that goes with it, and now we don't feel complete anymore. And what is God in all of this, when we felt called by God to go into foster care and adoption, right?
Mhm.
And though that was the beginning stages of it, that didn't last forever. We just said, why can't we just make this this is the right thing to do? Like that we're called by God, but it's the right thing to do. Like, let's
Right.
do this. Let's continue to do this. And so me and my wife, we're trying to figure all of it out. And my wife deconstructed from Christianity way quicker than I did,
Yeah.
which was fine. I was okay with it.
Yeah.
Um, and I understood. Then, but I'm still in it. And now I'm trying to figure out my relationship with God, and how does this work? God was my best friend before, and now I feel like he's not. Why didn't he warn me? Why didn't he let me know that something was up? There's a lot of whys.
Right.
And if God and at that point I'm an evangelical, God is the one who's ultimately in control of everything. He's
Right.
the all-seeing, all-powerful, all-knowing. Why, if he called us to do this work, why didn't he at least try to protect us?
Right.
I'm working in a ministry, and I'm trying to take care of kids. I'm not making a lot of money, those
Mhm.
kind of things. We're making it by fine, but at the same time,
Right.
um and and that's just the relationship part of it, with God. So I'm no longer in love with God at this point. I am
Right.
not I don't love God. You know um and I don't know how to fix that. I'm praying that he would, and
Right.
he would do something, because I'm not able. um and the things kind of come up, and when this happens, like, oh, God, God gave his son for us, and all that stuff. Well, he raised him back up from the dead, at least.
Right. Right.
It's not like,
Yeah.
and during that time, I'm learning how horrible the church is with grief. Because I've been a Christian all my life, so the people that are coming to the funeral know that I've been a Christian all my life. They know me and all that. And I hear, oh, she's in a better place. She's,
Right.
she's no longer suffering, which was weird because she wasn't suffering.
Right.
So I don't know what you're talking about. And then, God wanted her in heaven or something like that. All those, things that they say to try to comfort. I'm like, this is not
Right.
working for me at all. I don't feel comforted or any of that. Like, God has her now. Yeah, of course I know that. Why are you treating me like an idiot?
Right.
I've been a Christian all my life. I know where she's at.
Yeah.
Like that's the stuff
Yeah.
I'm feeling.
Right. Right. And I mean, that's warranted. Totally. I mean, of course.
Yeah.
Of course you're. Yeah. It's nobody likes to be. I don't know what's the word. Pandered to, I guess, when they're hurting, like it or I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Like my brain's not working, but
Yeah. I
anger in
think I
that
know what you're talking.
situation is
I know what you're talking
understandable.
about.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like don't treat me like I'm dumb just because I'm sad. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
But and it's like one of those things where it's like there was a few people that just kind of sat there and they were with me, and that was very helpful.
right,
And it's like in those times, I think that's the best is when just somebody's just kind of there, as much as or they leave when you want them to leave, those kind of
hmm
things.
yeah.
When if somebody makes a meal or something like that for the family, that's helpful.
Oh, dude, this is.
Yeah,
I'm in the South, buddy. That's what happens. Somebody dies, you're getting
Mhm.
fed. Like
Yeah,
you might be sad, but you're gonna be full.
yeah. I'm from the
Yeah.
north.
Okay, all right, everybody and their mama brings something over, and it's usually
Yeah,
some homemade stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's the best. It's just so that you don't have to think
yeah.
about it, right? Um. So anyway, kind of going back to the relationship with God. I'm still working in the ministry. I am doing praise and worship in that ministry in the homeless shelter. Um, I start doing a Bible study to try
hmm
to figure out God more.
Right,
So the Bible study, though I was using it for other people to learn about God, I was also trying to understand the Bible better and what my situation was,
right,
my relationship with God, because I couldn't figure it out. Every time I went to praise and worship, it was just like I hated. It's like I had this like low grade hatred towards God, and
right,
I'm singing these love songs to Him, and I'm hoping that He kind of changes my heart in the midst of it. And so I'm I get to about 4 years, and at this point, it's just like I often say I didn't love God, but I was trusting God. I was
hmm
just trying to trust God that He was going to change it up. Something's going to happen. Something in the Bible studies, something that somebody would preach, or some type of something that would just change my heart. And um, so I think subconsciously, I I did this, but at the time I didn't know I was doing it.
hmm
Um, Something hid in my brain, like, why is it that everybody is so upset with atheists in Christianity? It seems like atheists are just the worst when it comes to Christian beliefs. Like you
right,
don't converse with an atheist. It's like you could converse with other religions, but watch out for those atheists. There's a
right,
bunch of mean, hateful people, and so it's like, you know what? I'm gonna go check this out and see what this is, why this is, and if I'm supposed to be preaching to all people, I need to know what they're about, and what some
hmm
of their arguments are and who they are, and that way I'm not misrepresenting them if I talk to them and I start talking about them.
hmm
So I start listening and I eventually come across this show called The Atheist Experience. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
uh
So Atheist Experience is this call-in show where Christians can call in and they can debate their beliefs to
Dude, I think I
atheists.
have seen this. It's a man and woman that do the show, right? Together?
No,
No? Okay,
no,
different show.
it's a bunch of people.
Okay.
So it's the I think it's like it's a atheist Society of Austin. I forget what their name is.
Okay.
The ACU, something like that. I forget. But um, Matt Dillahunty was on there for quite a while, so he's famous for being a Christian who started to go towards becoming a pastor, then became an atheist, and so he
Right.
goes on. He goes on a lot of debates. So he was on the show for quite a while. I think he has his own thing now. It's called The Hang Up.
Okay.
But you got to listen to people call in and talk about their beliefs, Christian beliefs, and every time it's like the atheist always had a one-up answer and the really great
Right.
explanations, and Christians were always relying on faith as their basis of truth, and it just, because of that, it would always be knocked down, because no, you're naming this fact as if it's true, and you can't just say the Bible is true without that claim being proof. So your Bible doesn't get to dictate truth. The claim doesn't get to dictate truth. You have to prove the claim.
Yeah.
So it was really great to kind of see all that. And then after a while of watching that, because I was just, I don't know, I was enjoying it.
Right.
And after a while, they came to this place where, okay, so for me, my foundation for Christianity was that the Bible was truth. It has no flaws within it. Everything within it is true. And if there's any contradictions in it, then there's no reason to believe it. And that's what was taught to me, was that. So I was listening to the show, and they said, well, there's a lot of contradictions in the Bible. One being that there's 2 different deaths of Judas. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And I went and I researched it. And there's 2 different deaths of Judas. Yeah. And one's in Acts and one's Matthew. One in Matthew, is the more famous one, where he takes the pieces of silver, throws it back at the rabbis. The rabbis take that silver, purchase a field, and then Judas goes and hangs himself. Well, in Acts, it says that Judas keeps the silver, and he purchases a field with it. And while he's tending his land, he falls from a cliff head first, and then when he hits the ground on impact, his innards explode. So it was 2 different,
same thing.
Yeah.
You get
2 different stories there, little contradictions,
Yeah, I run into that a lot, man, and that really boggles my mind, because I see, and even when I was going to church, I was like, I mean, this, I would read, because I went hard, man. I was in apologetics classes. I was in, when I was going to school, and I really wanted to be able to defend the Christian faith. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the more you read that book, you're like, well, I mean, that book is an editorial. That book is a collection of stories from different authors, edited by different people from completely different time periods. I mean, there's not even a cohesive book. At best, it's a series of short stories or a series of mythologies that were written down. And not that that's bad, and I don't feel like, from a Christian perspective, you can still use that book to guide you, or
Sure.
what I mean, the stories, the myths, the things that you use, but to feel it or to see it as infallible and completely free of contradiction or anything is just completely bonkers. And I saw that, and that was one of the things with me. I was like, well, maybe this path isn't right for me. I don't think I'm cut out for being a Southern Baptist.
Yeah. So yeah, once I saw that, I was like, well, I guess I'm an atheist now, because I had already deconstructed from charismatic, and that was hard. Like, that was very difficult, because there was a lot more ties of family and growing up and people I knew from birth. So that was a lot harder. I had already felt so drained for trying to trust God for 4 years and getting nowhere with it. But then I finally come to that place where I'm like, oh, I'm an atheist. Oh, okay. And it's no big deal. But then I start processing, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm working in the ministry and I'm an atheist. Now, how am I going to maneuver this? Because I'm preaching, I'm praying, I'm doing
Right.
praise and worship, and I did that for seven more months before I was able to get
Wow.
comfortable enough to get out.
How did the
So
break go? I mean, how did the break happen? Was it
we were moving,
okay?
so we were moving to be closer to my wife's family. So uh, it was like one of those things where it was like, okay, I need to hold out for 7 months here
I got you.
because it doesn't make sense to get a new job and
Right.
then
So you
uproot.
weren't like, oh, screw you guys, I'm going home, and then having to live in the same town
Yeah,
as everybody.
Jesus is fake, motherfuckers.
Yeah, deuces. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that
yeah.
sounds like a pretty the most favorable transition that there could have been in that scenario.
So there's definitely some highlights of me staying in the ministry while being an atheist, and that is because the guys were on the men's shelter. They could have to be in chapel 4 times a day.
Mm,
They'd have to do a
okay.
chapel service 4 times a day.
Wow.
Yeah, to if you want a breakfast, you got to go through a chapel service. You want lunch,
Mm.
chapel service. Dinner, chapel service. You want to sleep in a bed, chapel service.
Oh man, that's brutal. That's so man, God, it's so wrong. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. And
gross.
they would like they would do offering every night.
Oh, that just,
So homeless men, homeless
what are they
people,
giving? Like,
pocket change. Some people would give pretty good. It's kind of
God,
surprising sometimes.
I feel like I need a bath
Oh my
just
gosh, yeah.
hearing that, dude. That is
I hated
gross,
that part.
dude. Oh man.
Hated that part.
Ugh.
Then so then they go there's a sorry there was a guy that was staying at the shelter that was homosexual and pagan,
Mhm.
and he would definitely like go through spurts where he would get anxiety because he didn't want to go into the chapel because they would be basically making him go into chapel. And some of the guys were pretty and so some of the staff were pretty rough on him, and I'm like, hey, just let him be. He's having a panic attack right now. Let's
Right.
just let him just chill,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. So there's times that I'd sit down, I'd talk with him, I'd let him vent and stuff like that. And then there's time. So um I walked into the security station. There, all the staff are kind of sitting there, they're talking, and they're saying, "Man, these guys, they don't want to go to chapel. And give me a break. What's wrong with them, man?" Blah blah blah. I go, I think if you put the shoe on the other foot, it would be a different story for you. Well, what do you mean? I go, well, let's say that we don't live in the society that we live in right now, but we don't live in a Christian society, but maybe like a Muslim society, right? And the Muslims have shelters that and but if you want to stay in their shelter, you have to go through their temple services.
Mhm.
You don't have to
Right.
like you don't have to do the prayers, but you have to be there for the prayers. You have to be there to listen to all the Muslim movies and
Right.
everything that we have here, but it's Muslim. And you're a Christian, and in order for you to get proper food and shelter, basic needs, you got to sit through it. How would you feel about that? Would you like to go through a Muslim service, a Muslim temple? Would that be enjoyable for you? And they're like, oh, uh,
Yeah. Uh,
yeah, it's because no, they never considered that,
right.
you know. So it was like one of those things where it was good because I was kind of like putting little nuggets and, hey, let's
Yeah.
think about this. Like,
Yeah.
why do they like get so upset about having to go to chapel?
Do you think that did anything to the guys that were I mean, do you think that hit home or were they
I think it just
caught
hit
in the
home.
machine?
Yeah, I think it was just hit home with a few of the staff.
Mhm.
It wasn't any of the uppers.
Right.
So but it was just to get them to be a little bit more empathetic.
That's
Be a little
good,
bit
man.
a lot nicer to the people that are staying there.
That's I think it's our mission as human beings to build other human beings up. I
Yeah,
don't and I don't understand why that's so complicated and why it has to well, it has to come with clauses and strings attached. It can just be to be. And I mean, it's a very hippie approach to things, I guess, but that's where I'm at these days, which is, it's come a long way. So, man, speaking of hippies, well, weird stuff. You want to get weird, Dan? Let's get weird, buddy. I got some, it's the second half of the show. I usually try to ask some strange questions and just get your opinions. And you can pass or say that I don't know, or that's horse shit, or whatever you want to say. All right. So,
yeah,
here we go. How do you feel about the concept of non-duality? Does it seem plausible to you?
I started studying non-duality, and I didn't get through it. Can you give me your example?
Okay, so the principle is that in a dualistic belief system, you have Sky Wizard, God, here, and you have us down here, and Sky Wizard moves us around. Your Abrahamic faith would be a dualistic society, whereas Hindu and while there are gods and deities, countless deities in Hinduism, everything is part of Brahman, right? And you have the Atman, which is the soul, but it's all part of Brahman, which is all
I love ramen.
everything.
Love ramen.
Yeah.
That's probably an old joke. Sorry about that. Yeah. I'm sure I'm not the first one that said that.
Nice. I gotta find some sound effects for that one. That's good stuff. But so the concept being that it's all a piece of the same, right? We are essentially God having conversations with himself. Not that, okay, from a Christian perspective, Christ says he's quoting the 82nd Psalm, and I think it's in the book of John, where he talks about, have I not said that you are God's? The kingdom of God is within you, like that concept, right?
Yeah.
And that would be the best way to relate it to Christianity, but just that it's all a part of one. We are all part of the same thing, and we manifest here for whatever reason. However, like the ins and outs don't really matter, but when it's all a continuous cycle, like we go into like the whole again, the ocean. All right. A wave is part of the ocean, but a wave is not the entire ocean. But when a wave leaves the shore, it's the ocean again. Does that make sense?
I think so.
We're getting wild here. I know.
Yeah.
I have no proof for you, but I feel like my journey has led me to where I'm nearly convinced that if there is esoteric nature to things, that this is probably the most practical in my eyes. Like I don't just to explain the different faiths. I think all religion is man-made. I feel like we've created everything. We have, because if you break it down to its nuts and bolts, it's a lot of the same.
Yeah.
Principles, the same. The core values are the same in many of them.
Right. So can you repeat the question again? Just so
how do you feel about the concept of non-duality coming from someone with such a strict dualistic background? Does that just sound bonkers to you, or is that something that would hit?
So I understand it. I kind of understand why it's there. So I can say that I think I believe I know the origins of it. Right.
A lot of Native American, the you know what I'm saying?
Cavemen.
No, but I mean, like the same principle is that it's all a part. We're all a piece of the earth. The earth is part of God. God is in us. We're all.
As far as I don't know if there's a spiritual realm, and I'm better not believing in a spiritual realm, because during that time it was, as I said, exhausting.
I got you.
And create a lot of anxiety. So if I don't believe that there is. Now, if I can say that I have hopes that there is a spiritual realm, because I'd love to see my daughter again,
Right.
But as far as like, this universe, like we're all a part of it. I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about that, the same main, I think particles that are within us are those that are like within the universe for life.
We're all stardust, man. That goes
stardust.
That goes back to Carl Sagan.
Yeah. And so, if you think about energy in that way, So I guess that's as far as I would go with that
Okay.
conversation. Yeah.
All right. So this kind of leads us into my next question. What is consciousness?
Yeah. I've done a lot of research on consciousness. I wouldn't say a lot. I've done a bit. I'm sure there's way more. And the only thing, because I've heard like, how do you even prove that there's consciousness? You know, because
Mhm.
right now the consciousness that I'm experiencing right now is anecdotal. It's, you know,
Mhm.
an anecdotal evidence is the lowest form of evidence when you look at it at the grand scheme of
Right.
things, you know. So, you know, what I'm experiencing right now, I don't necessarily have proof that I'm truly experiencing it. You know, and so that kind of throws you off a little bit because you know, okay, so think about this because this is even like thrown around when somebody was asking like on the atheist experience whether a person can stay saved because their consciousness is made up of this mind, right?
Mhm.
And if that person who is saved goes and gets into a horrible car accident or falls and they go through some brain damage,
Mhm.
they could essentially become a totally different person and
Mhm.
experiencing life in a different way to where at one time they're a good Christian person, now they're this horrible mean person that, you know, curses God and
Mhm.
all this stuff, right? Are they still a Christian or were they a Christian to begin with because their consciousness has changed? The experience
Mhm.
has changed for them. So their perception on life is totally flipped because of this accident that happened. And so, you know, the person that you are today could potentially be someone else tomorrow.
So in that respect, would you say that consciousness is just a biological byproduct of brain function?
I would say.
You think so?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me. I don't want that to be true because, you know, I'm all into the weird esoteric shit. So I'm hoping it's something magical and freaky. But I mean, you know,
If that brings you peace,
right. I mean,
you
it
know,
does. And I mean, not peace. I don't know that I don't need that to give me inner peace. You know what I mean?
gives you structure.
Yeah, I mean,
It gives you structure.
it's just some cool shit to think about. Like it's stuff
Mm,
that I enjoy pondering and researching. Like I don't know the answers, and I'm
yeah.
perfectly okay with the fact that I don't know the answers.
Mm,
And that's what makes it fun to discuss it because
yeah.
nobody knows. You know what I mean? And even if you break it down to the most scientific answer you can possibly find, there's still going to be a point where they're like, "Fuck, I don't know." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's gonna go back, and they're gonna get well. We're not sure. And is it just that we haven't found out yet? I mean, probably. I'm cool with that. But
Yeah.
I don't feel like the scientific realm and the esoteric realm necessarily have to be separated the way
Sure.
that some people do.
So I look at it this way too. With you know science, it's definitely something that can be um, experimented, and with certain situations, you get the same outcome over and over and over again, and it
Mhm.
won't change. And so those certain examples become like the foundation for whatever the research that they're doing or whatever, you
Right.
know, because the outcome is always the same. And when it comes to something that they're not sure, it's not a theory, it's a hypothesis. The
Right.
theory is actually something that they come the closest to.
Mhm.
So like the theory of evolution, well, it's not a hypothesis. It's actually the theory is more of the set in stone. When we look at the past, we see
Mhm.
this over and over and over again, and there's mountains of research and
Mhm.
evidence for it. Don't ask me for it because I'm not a scientist, but they have it. And when it comes to like the spiritual realm, it's like one of those things where it's like, and I know you're going to agree with me on this, but it's like, yeah, we don't know about that. Uh, so it's not something. It's a hypothesis that could be
Mhm.
because we have a lot of experiences of people claiming the spiritual realm,
Mhm.
and there's certain situations where we have evidence that it was not the spiritual realm, that it
Mhm.
was either a hallucination, mental health, or something
Mhm.
along those lines. Something crazy happened that just wasn't spiritual. And then, but you get to that point where it's like you got to be careful, and I know you are. but other people would say, well, I can't explain this thing, so it must be spiritual. And it's like, well, no, you don't get to put that claim that that's automatically spiritual.
Right.
It's more of a I don't know, and it can stay in the I don't know. But my best guess is it could be spiritual, and that's okay. It's just it gets to a point where I've heard all my life too, where people say, "Well, that thing happened, so it must have been God or the devil."
Well, if man made religion, I think we agree there. If man made religion, and we are man, and it's all in our head anyway. I mean, I don't see the separation. Like like the spiritual realm is intrinsic, I feel. And I think a lot of Eastern philosophy has really figured that out. I think with a lot of the Buddhism and the teachings and Hinduism and stuff like that, I feel like there's not as stark of a separation between physical, reality and what's going on in our heads, because it's all just a piece of the same thing.
Well, you got certain situations where like you don't know, and we are kind of saying that religion gets certain things like terribly wrong. For forever, many religions thought like lightning came from the gods. Oh, we know that that's just static electricity in the clouds. Right. Then microorganisms that are diseases that we can't see, we found out it was sickness, not a punishment from God or an evil entity, those kind of things. So it's one of those things where, what are we going to find out next? And,
oh man, that's the question, dude.
Yeah.
And okay, so
I think religion helps structure those things of the unknown sometimes. I will say that
we fill it in with the religion. What we don't understand, we fill it in with dogma. We fill it in with teachings, so we can have some sort of structure. Because for whatever reason, humans generally are not okay with not knowing. We have to know. We have to know what's happening. We have to understand why it's happening. And I firmly believe that even science, you go back, I mean, it's basically what I just said. Both sides lack a true, believable origin story. I mean, like there's no, like, yes, okay, the Big Bang, like that makes sense. I understand how it looks, the blah, 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 blah. But where before that? I mean, that is a description of what happened, yes, but why did that happen? There is, and I don't know. Nobody knows. Like, there's no explanation.
Fuck.
So, yeah.
I definitely like. I hear the Big Bang Theory, and I like my brain cannot comprehend that. You know what I mean? So if it actually happened, I don't know. I know that like that sounds crazy. Like everything within the universe being packed down so tightly into this like small, minute, tiny ball, just floating in the vastness of nothingness. It just it becomes this thing where it's like okay, so this is one thing that I've been thinking about, and this throws my brain off. Okay.
All right.
So there's essentially a micro universe that we don't see, right? And in this micro universe, if there is awareness, we don't know really. We don't suspect that there is awareness or whatever. But these things are essentially running our whole universe. Like they're in control of everything. Everything's made of what, light waves, and is it sound waves too? I forget.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah,
I'm not, by no means am I an expert in this. We're getting
me either.
You get into quantum physics.
We don't have to go very far, but it's like those things are basically making everything. They're the things that make everything, and we're finally aware of them. But they don't know that they're aware of us, if there is an awareness.
But they might, because
maybe they do. You're right. Maybe they do.
You ever heard of the dual slit experiment?
No.
Where they were passing particles through like a board, and it had two slits in it, right? And they were passing particles to see how they reacted to different changes, and they found that they reacted differently when being observed. Like when a person was in the room observing these things happen, they acted like one wave. And then when the person left the room and there was just a camera on it, they were so basically the particles were both light and matter. They were both things. You know what I mean? They were moving in between. So it gets into quantum. And dude, I don't know. Wow. I'll send you a link to the dual study.
That'd be awesome.
It's fascinating.
But what is out there, right? In our, like, as far as our whole universe, what else is beyond that? And are they observing us and we're not yet able to observe them? You know what I mean? And it's kind of like the end of Men in Black.
Yeah.
Almost where the marble. Yeah. It's almost kind of like that, you know.
I love those damn movies.
But I've been thinking about that lately. It's just like, you know, there comes to a point where what else is beyond our knowable universe? I don't know, man. It's just crazy to think about that stuff.
Yeah, this is welcome to my world.
Yeah,
Dad. This is what I do. I drive around in a garbage truck and ponder, quantum physics, watch YouTube videos, and it's out of control, bro. It's out of control. So I'm gonna skip that one. We'll come back, maybe not. We're gonna stay.
Is that the morality? Is that the morality issue?
Yeah.
Come back to that.
Yeah. Okay, but I think this will tie in. So, as such a technologically advanced society, and we have telescopes that can see millions of miles away, yada yada yada, and we keep getting more and more, right? AI, all that stuff. Why do you think we still operate under 2,000-year-old myths and mandates and rules that were allegedly chiseled in stone on top of a mountain in one area of the world, or stories that were told by the Buddha as may or may not have actually historically existed, and that doesn't matter to Buddhists, which blows my mind coming from a Christian background. But why are we still hanging on to 2,000-year-old shit and not? Because if you think at this point we would be worshiping our own minds, or you know what I'm saying, or we would. I don't understand why it hangs on the way it does. What about religion hangs on to it, or we hang on to it rather?
Yeah. So I had some time to think about that a little bit. I really believe that it comes down to community and traditions. I think when you look at people and how they have thrived and why we are where we are today is because of community. We're a pact. We thrive on being our own community, and within that community is rules and systems, and those religions, I believe, come into play with maintaining structure and order of those communities. And the reason why we're still holding on to stuff that's just old is just because that's what has ran the system ever since. It's those religious systems that have kept communities in place. And so if you go against that system, you essentially become an outcast.
Will it change? Will it ever change? What's it going to take
It is changing. I mean, true. Right now we're seeing, America, where are we? Like 70% non-spiritual, or at least not Christian. At least not Christian.
Right.
Which is crazy. Back when I was a kid, it was like 93%.
Yeah.
That claimed Christianity.
Yeah, and I feel like it's
the internet.
I think the
internet has something. I think the internet has a lot to do with it.
But it's also people like yourself that went through the worst of the worst, or at least maybe not necessarily the worst. And you said this earlier, and I meant to say something, but I didn't want to interrupt you. Don't minimize your trauma, man.
Yeah.
Like, you went through what you went through, and breaking from that was pretty fucking traumatic, and it's okay. Like, you don't have to say that yours was as bad as other people's, because I mean,
That's a religious side of me still.
Right. You don't have to be humble anymore, bro. Like bad shit happens. You know what I mean? Like, I've got my trauma. It's not religious related, but I don't look at it as any less or any more than yours. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Right.
So don't,
I too try to maintain the belief that our traumas are not to be used as competition.
Yeah, you have to, because the only way we're ever going to normalize it or normalize the reaction to it is by doing what we're doing right here and talking about it, and not and fighting off the urge to say, well, that happened to you. Well, I'll see that and I'll raise you this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so where does our sense of morality come from without those religions?
Oh man. So I think so. I'm a true believer, and I actually had this brought to me by my older brother the other day. He sent me a Joe Rogan video, and Joe Rogan was more saying on how, Christianity really has laid down the foundation for morality, and then he started kind of shit talking atheists. He started saying, like, there's no morality. Yeah, no morality with atheists, and I just they have no belief system and stuff, and I was like, so I responded. It was in a video, in a text. I don't know what that was. I think it was my Alexa. Hold on. There.
She's always listening.
Yeah, leave me alone, Alexa.
Don't say her name. It's like Voldemort.
So I responded. I said, well, the type of atheist that Joe Rogan is talking about sounds like a very hardcore, nihilistic type of atheist, that nothing matters, and we're why do anything, nihilism to its core. And I said, I'm not a nihilist. I have belief systems. They're definitely in place, and I'm definitely not a hardcore atheist. I'm an agnostic atheist. So basically, I don't know if there's a God, but if but because I don't have enough proof, I'm not going to say that there is or isn't a God.
As my friend Eric said, you have yet to be convinced.
Yeah.
Of the existence of said God. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I said, well, as far as like religion creating morality, I think societies create morality as we grow and evolve. And we learn from each other, and we eventually come to like these conclusions that, oh, this is a wrong thing to do. Like, you got to think, like, the church of Christianity back in the Dark Ages really truly believed that they were supposed to burn witches. And then they made some of the worst torture devices ever conceived during that time in the name of God. Right? So, and then Christians today would say, oh, well, those weren't really Christians. Well, who were the real Christians then?
Right.
Because those were the guys that were running it. That was the church, and they were preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's just that there was a lot of shit that was tied in with it. Anyway, I said, so then I continue. I said, so I believe that, societies have created morality, but they've used religion as the tool to push that morality. Now, however, in the midst of all these different societies, you have religions that are also orchestrating immorality. Which one are you just choosing to accept within the religion? You're just choosing to accept the morality that was grounded. What about all the immorality that was set up by the same system and same leadership? You can't have one without the other. And that's why I say, like, I think people in societies eventually learn what's moral and what's not, what is immoral. And sometimes we go backwards and sometimes we go forward. It just depends on.
So you think it's all societal?
I think it's more societal. I think it's more community based.
Okay. I tend to lean that there's something innately in us that can make determinations. You know what I mean? Like kids will hug each other. You know what I mean? And kids are sweet sometimes, but kids are also, pretty brutal. I think they're a good example of the polarity that we possess. I think that all of us possesses, and that's getting into more like I don't know if you ever read like any kind of hermetics or anything like that. That's getting like an occult stuff, but it's the concept that every person is both things at all times. And we just slide along a scale of good and bad, right? Which I also think, to me, is illustrated by the Judeo-Christian version of God, of Yahweh, or whatever you want to call it, because Old Testament God was a pretty wrathful, mean son of a bitch. You know what I mean? And New Testament God, represented by Christ, was loving and calm and everything that we strive to be. So that if we're created in God's image, then why wouldn't we be both of those things?
So I think when it comes down to that, you kind of brought up like the kids and some do really nasty things, and sometimes they learn from it, sometimes they don't. I think it depends on. So I said the community, and I do mean individuals too when I say community. So there's certain individuals that will grow up with a mind defect that will have less empathy than the next person. And we know that this happens. So there's certain people that have narcissism, right? And that's just, they have it. It's not necessarily their fault that they have it. What does become their fault is if they don't try to maintain it and work on it. But for a narcissist to work on themselves in that aspect can be very difficult. I acknowledge that. But we also have individuals who could have a brain trauma and become very evil. So we've seen this with serial killers, where they will have this brain injury, and then some just kind of clicks, and the empathy part of their brain is just gone.
It's the lead, man. You ever heard that?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, there's a theory that it's why it was so prominent in that era, was all the leaded gasoline and something in it. There were certain people that were already prone to that. Now, I mean, there's I don't have any proof of that, but that was always interesting to me.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where I think it just depends. You got to think too, like, I mean, what was going on during the Dark Ages? I don't know. It's I think we as we go through this life more and more, we start understanding more and more things. But our basis for morality, I think it's because we really truly live and learn. We experience, and that those experiences help us guide our decision making. And unfortunately, sometimes it guides us in the wrong path. Many Christians would say that would be with me because I'm going to hell now. So, or I never was a Christian.
That's probably more like it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I would say that I was never saved. I would say that. I would say, yeah, if you want to say that I was never saved, okay, I can admit that because I have no proof that I was saved. Right. But when somebody says that I was never a Christian, I will say, no, you're wrong, because Christianity is the community. That I was a part of. So I was a part of that community. If you want to say it on a spiritual aspect, then fine, that's okay. But that you mean that I was never saved, but I was a part of your community.
First of all, I mean, people kill me, man. Like, how dare you? How do you don't know? How the hell do you know? Like, what the hell I was or am or is not, or I don't know. That's a whole nother conversation. Sorry, man. True. Last one. Sure. And it's real weird. I made a TikTok about this because I couldn't hold it in. Dan, it had to come out. With the advancements in AI, things are getting pretty scary, in my opinion. And if AI were to become sentient and we have a Skynet situation, would AI start its own religion, and what would that look like?
So if it did, and I had time to think about it, I could not come up with one until you just asked it again. So maybe I had enough time to process.
Yeah.
If it did, I think it would be very self-focused, to where I am the perfect being and that sort of thing.
Okay. Why?
because I I think that AI would have gotten to a point where it would notice the differences between the flaws of human and then the how it would view itself. I think that it would become self-absorbed, kind of like a what's that? What's that Avenger? The Avenger bad guy, Ultron.
Oh yeah, Ultron. Yeah.
Ultron,
Yeah.
kind of like Ultron, where
Yeah.
he notices the flaws within humans. Well, I don't think that AI would want to get rid of humans. Um, maybe some humans, but
Right.
I think that it would ultimately just have itself as its own god.
See, I don't think, because the AI pulls all of its information from the internet, right? So it's basically going with what we feed it. I don't see it. I don't see it building a superiority complex in so much. I feel like it's going to be just like us. Like it'll have the same flaws we have because there's nothing in its programming or
No,
there's
I'm not.
nothing that says it's
Hold on.
going to.
I just want to say that not saying that this AI would be totally evil. I'm just saying
Right.
that it would notice itself.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that it would be evil.
Right.
I think it would notice itself as a superior, like kind of like we notice it with dolphins and any other animal and species on this earth. What would it stop itself from viewing itself as the superior being? We already do that.
Right. We do. Ah, damn, dude. Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't mean that we're all evil. It does, and it doesn't mean that we're all good. I don't know. Like I said, I'm just saying, humans in one aspect notices its own power and how it's superior, and so we view ourselves higher, like a god, towards other beings on this earth, other species.
That's fascinating, man. Yeah. No, I don't know.
Crazy shit, right?
Yeah. Now my answer's gone. So because now I don't believe the answer that I formulated. So
that's all right. It's an ongoing thing.
That's how we do things. Yeah.
I'm scared of AI. I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of fear, but
and this is
with me.
I just hope I'm alive to see it. If it all comes down, like I just want to be present. Yeah, I know that sounds crazy.
I think we will.
If it collapses, which eventually it will collapse, I think we're.
I don't think.
Now we're getting into my radical political views, but.
I think even AI has limitations right now. I don't think AI has the full. I think that there's still some firewalls, I guess I would say, in place from keeping it to
safeguards.
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm saying is we're going to eat ourselves before the robots get a chance to take over.
What is that one show? It's like Love, Sex, and Robots on Netflix.
I hadn't watched it.
There's it's essentially like robots are like it's like an anthology, but one show it's like it's animation, and one of the shows it's where the robots are basically like in control of the universe, and so they visit Earth every once in a while as they like this tourist spot for and all the humans are dead, and nice. They kind of allude to I think global warming and wars as its downfall.
That'll do it.
Right.
Well, man, I think we're gonna wrap it up, but I really appreciate you being here and putting up with my shit for an hour.
It was fun, man.
Minutes. Take this time, plug your stuff, man. Tell people where they can find you.
Did we even say fuck? I don't even remember if we said. I don't think we cussed.
I usually say fuck.
I don't know.
It's just ingrained in my vocabulary.
Fuck it.
Oh, fuck it. Yeah. Now we did. So go ahead and tell people where the fuck they can find you.
All right. So you can find me on TikTok right now. So Lollygag Dan is cosplay, entertainment, skits, and that sort of thing. And then if you want to hear more of what I've been talking on the show, then you'd go to Heretical Dan. I am on Instagram for Lollygag Dan, but I'm not extremely active there. That might change. It depends on what's going on with TikTok here.
Right. But. Well, cool, man. Well, thanks again for being here. I'm I love this. I love doing this series, man. I've had so much fun, like just hearing all these perspectives and stuff. So
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Well, we hope to have you back sometime. Eventually, we're going to go back to doing sharing map episodes, and my big hippie homesteader buddy Dave will be here. So
yeah, you're gonna have to have a whole new set of questions.
Oh yeah, I got you, man. Trust me, I got plenty. One thing I have is questions, Dan.
Nice.
All right, bud. Well, thanks again. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
And we will see you next time.
Take care.